until the past few episodes, the Shaman King adaptations have been showing a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. In terms of the 2001 anime, it's been a situation where it's all about building things up, creating atmosphere, highlighting a lot of the character interactions, all before you get to the actual shaman fight. Whereas the newer adaptation adapts a little bit more wholesale from the manga and keeps things fairly consistent. But it forgoes showing us a lot of that building of the team and their relationship towards each other. But at the same time, it really starts to get into what a lot of people have come to this series to see, and that's shaman fight. And it is only through those fights that we really do see the convictions of some of these characters really at the forefront. And that's what this series that I've created is all about. What's the difference is all about comparing the source material to its various media adaptations. And with Shaman King, it now has two separate anime adaptations, the 2001 anime series and the 2021 anime series. So far, both have their own forms of negativity behind them. The original anime adaptation has put the actual Shaman King fight so far towards the back end of things that it honestly starts to feel like a bit of an afterthought to the overall premise. But on the bright side, it builds your characters and helps them grow a little bit closer together, and it helps our understanding of them as a whole. Although when it adapts things that were supposed to be in the Shaman King fight, I really start to question why it's 3-on-3 matchups almost constantly when there's no reasoning behind it. Whereas with the newer adaptation, it's tried so hard to rush towards the Shaman King fight at such a breakneck pace, it's easy to see that maybe some people got a little lost in the weeds along the way. Certain things are made very unclear and unfocused because of that mad dash sprint to the finish, more or less. And as with last episode, we saw the more violent backstory to Chocolove in comparison to the original anime series. Whereas Chocolove used to be in a gang and he had killed at least a couple of people in his past, whereas in the original anime it made it so that he mostly just was with his master, and no mention of any violence in his past was ever made. Does that take away from the character? Or was the violence in his past wholesale unnecessary? I already know that going forward there's a lot of things that tie into it, and that violence that he exhibited, and there's a greater purpose towards it. But considering that Chocolove is only given so much to work with in the original anime, it would feel kind of superfluous to have included that. But let's check out the second fight of the Shaman King tournament as the X-Laws take on the Egyptian team, the Nile. Now, naturally, each version has a little bit of a difference, and something that is kept out of both versions of the anime adaptation is when Peyote wakes up after being taken to the medical center, having lost to Chocolove, and Peyote questions his comrade, who he refers to as Turban, which seems a little bit racist, and they question that they don't really know what Hao's personal feelings are in a lot of situations, even questioning if he has any feelings at all. So this scene is actually fairly important because it shows that even amongst those who are dedicated to Hao, there is some form of doubt within them to some degree. Meanwhile, in terms of the original anime, I also forgot to mention, for the manga we're in volume 14, chapter 120, From Inn to Waiting Room, and for the original anime we're in episode 43, Battle of Gods, and for the newer anime we're in episode 21, Iron Maiden Jeanne. And for the original anime, this is after Yo has already received this great upgrade, and we hear this explanation of Egyptian culture. and how shamanism actually is incorporated into it as well, and that lets you know that there's some kind of correlation there as well. And Iron Maiden Jeanne wants to go off and meet Yo in this adaptation in order to kind of sway him towards her side. That's the funny thing about it. The whole situation with Yo, especially in the original anime, there were those who really wanted to bring them towards their side. And with the third great power, there's only really two factions in the original anime. That's the X-Laws and House faction. And you get to see a preview of Iron Maiden Jeanne, which you really don't see in the manga or newer anime until the time of the shaman fight. And then our group arrives in this town. And it's that scene that was originally supposed to take place in the Patch Village, where Anna is buying souvenirs and she's trying to haggle for it. They've just put it in some random town, and then they realize that there's nothing but shaman in this town, which is a little bit dubious, but it lets you know you're getting closer to the Patch Village. And then we get a preview of one of the teams that was fought in the shaman tournament, but it's just another participant they come across. It was a gathering of all the strongest shaman for some reason. And that's where you start to hear about God class shaman. And everybody's kind of on pins and needles trying not to end up in a fight against a God class shaman. It kind of treats the shaman fights like Pokemon battles. You encounter a shaman, you throw down. And Ren gets insulted because he's made to seem like he's weak for having allies. And now they're starting to show off that Ren still has ambitions of defeating Yo, to at least a little bit. And of course, Hao wants to use that, wants to join forces because he's powerful, especially after the power of the Book of Hao that they had managed to unlock. And Hao's trying to play into the idea that Ren might not defeat Yo, so kind of give him a little bit of doubt in Hao and his particular interest in Manta, the way Hao wants to make people his, quote unquote. And then they're attacked by other shaman because they were more or less associating with Hao. Get a little bit of a showdown. I do love that everybody rolls up to help out. Chocolate was straight about to die right there. And Ren's massive oversoul, and then the Niles row up having beaten down the boys. It's interesting how the minions of Hao are being prosecuted in the original anime, but they want to use him as bait to lure out Hao in order to defeat him. And you learn that they ultimately just ran away from Hao because they just didn't want to follow them anymore. But the Niles fully believe that they'll be able to take down Hao. It's weird how he's trying to convince people that he's a resurrected mummy, and they just up and get into confrontation with the X-Laws. Whereas in the newer anime and the manga, Yo is just kind of chilling, resting a little bit, being happy that Team The Ren won, talking about how Chocolove managed to overcome the odds, and just generally having a good time. It's a lot more relaxed, a lot more chill. A lot of people comment about how, there's no moments of camaraderie with the gang, but these moments where they're just in a room, chilling out, hanging around, making jokes at each other's expense, that's camaraderie. The downside to the manga really is that they just kind of yada yada over stuff that doesn't take place before a fight or a little bit after a fight. That's the thing, because there are several chunks of time that we aren't really privy to within the series. There are weeks that some of these characters have spent together. We just don't really see that often. And I feel like the newer anime doesn't explain that enough in a lot of places where it really should. Because there are times where it's just like, oh, this much time has passed, and then the anime will just not say that, whereas the manga makes that perfectly clear. So a lot of points taken away from the newer anime on that front. And that's where the boys show up and make it known that they're not followers of Hao any longer, and they're not even calling themselves the boys. And they go into a little bit of their backstory. They would they had dreams of becoming this band at one point, and then Hao appeared before them, and then Hao tried to bring them to his side. Honestly, it's almost as though he was just amassing followers at random almost, but they admit that leaving their dreams to Hao was probably a mistake. Well, there's a little bit more sympathy here, and at least with the fact that it came after Chocolove had taken them down and spared their lives. It's actually a bit of a sweet moment, and so they formed a new band for the most part. They're just gonna go about their lives. That feel that's a little bit more appropriate than like several episodes later down the line. And then Ryu learns about who the next showdown in the shaman fight is, and it's the team that Lyserg is on. And I really do like that we're actually seeing the shaman fight. Team X1 with the X-Laws, and Iron Maiden Jeanne, who is sealed away, getting a little bit of Hao's commentary on the situation, because Iron Maiden Jeanne's so close to his level too, but also his interest in Lyserg, because it's obvious he's trying to kind of bring Lyserg to a darker place. And then we get into chapter 121, Justice X. And Ryu with his hair down still looks pretty good. And Yo's opinion on it ultimately comes down to, Lyserg did what he wanted to do. It just is what it is. And then the Niles start to just kind of trash talk the X-Laws. Meanwhile, in the original anime, it's just a random situation, and when the Niles learn that they're the X-Laws, they take an interest, and the Niles are the one to pick a fight in order to decide who's the true ones who speak towards God. A confrontation of ideals is okay, but might as well just be shaman fights, man. And Iron Maiden Jeanne's fully ready to throw down. He's like, if these guys want the smoke, we'll give it to them. It's like, square up, motherfuckers. But the boys are actually saved. And this is where the boys actually kind of are shown in this version not to really have much of a direction. But in both versions, the Niles are looking to kind of show off the spirituality of the Egyptian race. Embalmers, those who command the cosmic power of the pyramids, and those who command the spirit of the slaves, which is still really messed up. And Marco is just not interested. And it ends up as a war of ideals regardless. Although, I like the fact that Iron Maiden Jeanne is not the one to coax it on in the manga and newer anime, whereas in the old era anime, it's just like, let's fuck them up. She's straight up like, oh, they want the smoke? We'll give them the smoke. Fuck them up. She wants Lyserg to be the one to show off how powerful he's become with all of his training. That, much like Chocolove showed off, he'll be the one to take on all three members of the Niles. And in all versions, Lyserg is ready to show off what he can do. Although in the older version, Iron Maiden Jeanne wants it to be an example towards Yo of what the righteousness that they have on their side can do. So it's more of a pitch in the original anime for Yo to come to the X-Laws side. So the competition gets underway, the fight between X-Laws and the Niles, although we don't have the moment where the rest of the X-Laws are just like, these guys are about to get fucked. And then Lyserg just starts taking them out with the quickness. Lyserg's just like, I'll just start breaking your mediums. Just boom, right there and then. And even their leader just gets captured instantly. And he's absolutely willing to completely take them all out. Although, there is a bit of a difference between the manga and newer anime, where Lyserg's comment towards Yo that only a fool frees a captured enemy is said with a little bit more malice in the manga, like he's saying it out of spite. Whereas in the newer anime, they're really trying to drive home the sympathetic angle for Lyserg, that he feels bad about what he's doing. And I feel like that is really something that the newer anime has been trying to drive home. Because I'll say it as many times as I have to. Lyserg in the original anime just did not feel sympathetic as a person for me because of a lot of the actions that he takes, especially towards his introduction. That he shows that he's just out the gate willing to hurt people for his objectives. So Lyserg hurting Team the Niles in any way, shape, or form doesn't feel off-brand for him. But Lyserg hurting people here, it's a little bit more shaky. Like, okay, we knew Lyserg was willing to strike people, but then he mentions killing them. And Lyserg never felt like the person to take it that far in the manga or newer anime. But I full on believe he'd take it that far in the original anime. Lyserg killing people in the original anime, I'm just like, I mean, yeah, I'm surprised he has it already. I missed this panel. He does actually tear up a little bit at the prospect of hurting people. So yeah, both the manga and newer anime want to convey Lyserg as, a little bit more pitiable in the direction that he chooses. And then we get into chapter 122, A-Nile-lation, where Lyserg gives them an opportunity to back out. And Lyserg comments about how weak they actually are in the original anime, although he does, in all versions say that he's willing to kill if it means stopping evil from being created within the world. And he does go on to say that, whereas in the original anime he talks about preventing more evil from flooding into the world with his actions, in the manga and newer anime he talks about how the X-Laws as a whole are all people who have lost people they love to a great evil, and this is necessary for them to go forward, stop How, and prevent any more victims. Like, they really feel that this is a righteous cause that they're going for, and Lyserg's trying to show his conviction that he'll kill if it means, fulfilling his objective, but it starts to feel more like he's trying to convince himself that this is what is necessary. And I really do have to say, Ryu in the original anime saying Lyserg isn't a kid who would say something so cold, again, just it doesn't line up. It's just like Lyserg has been a cold bastard in the original anime multiple times. Like, the idea of hurting people just was very much how he was introduced to the group, because he had already hurt several shaman beforehand. It didn't hurt them badly, but they had come for revenge against him. He had already made multiple enemies, so being a bit of a dick was already Lyserg's direction. Interestingly enough, whereas in the manga and newer anime, it's Ren who says that something might have changed within Lyserg, it's actually Anna in the original anime to notice that. Anna does take a bit of an interest in him, and it's Manta who questions how he feels about the direction that Lyserg is going right now. But in both versions, he decides that, this is what he chose. He chose to be with the X-Laws. If this is what makes him feel comfortable, that maybe it's okay. It's interesting, too, because in the original anime, Yo is a lot more vocal about pushing back against Lyserg going down this darker path. He directly wants Lyserg not to go down this way. Whereas in the manga and newer anime, he's leaving it up to Lyserg. He's just like, if he decides to do this, then there's no going back. He'll have gone too far with the direction that he's in right now. So he's kind of giving Lyserg this chance to maybe pull back. And that's Yo's philosophy. This is a choice. Whatever you choose, it's up to you. But I came to cheer him on, if only as a friend. But of course Ren says he's too soft, and once things are done, it'll be too late. That Yo's sentimentality will be his downfall. But Anna just rolls with it. And I love that Yo has a comb ready for Ryu to rejuvenate his pompadour. Although, I wish we had in the newer anime the fact that in the manga, Anna and Yo are actually taking care of Ryu's pompadour, actually styling it up. Also, they cut out the fact that Hao was eating a baguette for some reason in the manga, and this one guy just taking offense to Hao being described as a great evil. And I love that Hao doesn't even disagree that, but we might be as bad as each other, all things considered. The comment of, we won't attack them, but if they do strike back, will go forward. But of course, the team isn't going to back down. Then we get into chapter 123, Crime and Punishment, where we see that their leader is willing to keep fighting no matter what. Team the Niles was actually willing to retreat, but their leader, he has too much pride to do so. Then he brings out his Silver Soul, Wings of Death, and displays that his spirit has a curse towards it. The curse of the pharaohs. The feathers from it will end up poisoning you, basically. Although the original anime cuts out the fact that it's a curse. That wings of death will come on swift wings to those who inhale them. And Lyserg is willing to do the do. Although it's interesting that in the original anime, Yo was actually willing to go forward and stop it. But it makes a little bit of sense because it's not even a actual fight in the shaman fight competition, whereas in the original manga and newer anime it's just like he has no reason to get involved. This is official fight, and it's a situation where both sides put their lives on the line. Yeah, and he even has to be told that he shouldn't interfere in the shaman fight. Yo shows a lot more passion in the original anime during certain moments, whereas other moments he doesn't show enough passion. Yo can be passionate in certain situations, but what each adaptation chooses to show him being passionate is very varied. But in each version, where something affects Lyserg, and it just stops short of taking this guy out, and we find out it's actually Morphine who stopped her attack. And in both versions, he gets hit with the Iron Maiden, and Jeanne actually chews him out a bit, and Marco is disappointed in him. The fact that he can't control his spirit, the fact that Lyserg harbors doubt within his soul, and that he'll be punished later for his transgressions. And I kind of prefer Yo's more solemn response to what happened with Lyserg. That it's more of a, you still have that light within you that we originally saw Lyserg. That there's still some sense of what's right and wrong. And then the leader wants to, spit some hot fire. But Jeanne's ready to throw down now. And the Furyoku that she has is epically powerful. And then it opens up. And it's a lot less violent in the older anime because for some reason there's thorns within the Iron Maiden. Whereas in the manga and newer anime, it's just an Iron Maiden. It's just straight up an Iron Maiden, and she was bleeding out a lot in the thing, which really puts it into a new perspective considering that Marco threw her and Yo's comment, "Oh god, she's naked!" Anna takes an actual interest in what's going on here. Oh, we're in chapter 124, Holy Girl, and then Jeanne goes about explaining her situation, and she just starts preaching her gospel. In each version, it's dramatic. And it's very, I take the sin and punishment onto myself to forgive the rest of the world. Also that the world may be at peace. And people full on think she'd be a great Shaman King. And then of course the leader of the Niles doesn't even believe. He's just like, whatever man. Goes on the attack, but Marco tells him to believe. No one can touch our master. And then he's just sealed within a torture device. Shamash, the god of justice, who will deliver divine punishment, and tells him to do his verdict. And whereas in the manga and newer anime, dude's just killed. Just right there and then. And Marco starts preaching that gospel. Laws of Hammurabi and all that good stuff. Like, oh man, they are believing in that peace. And it's all about 10. X means 10, that's the number of laws, the 10 commandments and all that. And then she dons her outfit. And then in chapter 125, we even have those of the patch being like, okay, she is possibly the next person to become Shaman King. Her powers are way powerful. Her outfit is pure oversoul. And she tries to get the others to kind of give up. Like, you can still repent, you can still be forgiven. And of course, they're not willing to just back down, try to go in on the attack, and they're put into these torture chairs. They're just like, you don't have the right to torture us, to bind us, to punish us. And she tries to explain that this is simply nature. She tries to get them to repent, and basically just tell her to screw off. And so Jeanne just walks back into the Iron Maiden, and she just has them end him right there and then, just violently and brutal. And Yo in the original anime, he's not about it whatsoever. The cruel way they're done in. It's even crueler in the manga and newer anime. And unlike in the original anime where all of them witnessed all of that go down and they're just kind of like, Monta's just like, I just saw people die. He was not ready for that. Everybody's taken aback by the brutality of the situation. It's just like, that wasn't a fight, that was a massacre. Whereas in the original anime, it's more that Yo is just at a loss for what to think about the situation with Lyser. But Ren just kind of rolls with it, and Anna just thinks she's arrogant. Whereas in the manga and newer anime, Yo, it just strengthens Yo's conviction to become Shaman King, because he's just like, yeah, I'm not letting any of these other guys become a Shaman King. They definitely don't. Their way of life definitely does not need to be enforced. Whereas in the original anime, Lyserg starts getting that tongue lashing. It's interesting because in the original anime, they make it a note that it was actually Lyserg who stopped morphine more than anything else. And they try to show that Yo did have a positive influence on Lyserg. I don't know. I don't know which one I really truly prefer more. I like that ultimately Yo decides that, look, this is Lyserg's choice. This is the shaman fight where anyone could die at the drop of a hat, but I'd like to believe that he won't go down that route. He has a lot of faith in Lyserg. Whereas in the original anime, it's more that Yo is actively trying to steer Lyserg away from that direction. And I guess it just depends on how you feel. Should Yo be a lot more active in trying to keep his friends away from certain routes? Because I will admit, Yo and his friends in the original anime are much more of a tight-knit group. There's a lot more of an emphasis on their friendship and their relationships, especially towards the beginning. These bonds that Yo has built. Whereas the original anime really tries to take Yo in a more shonen protagonist kind of direction. The newer anime and the manga, it's more, it just strengthens his will to become Shaman King even more. Take direct control of everything even more so. It's really hard to say, but either way, in both adaptations, X-Laws versus the Niles team, and the Niles team got obliterated in a much more brutal fashion in the manga and newer anime. Like, it was a lot more on the cruel side. So, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Which version did you prefer the most? How did you feel about Lyserg's characterization as well as Yo's, and how they intermingled and played off of each other? Do you prefer Yo to take a more direct approach in trying to stop Lyserg, trying to actively get him not to go down this route? Or do you like it better where Yo is a more passive participant in this and has a little bit more faith in Lyserg not going down that route, not going down the route of being a cruel person? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you like this video, please drop me a like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, all that good stuff. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.